How's everybody doing today? Again, this is Real Estate the Hard Way. Like, comment, subscribe. Let's get the subscribers up. Um, Today, I wanted to discuss kind of the work and my plans for the year. So I've got a lot of plans right now. I want to execute on my first apartment building. So what does it take to own an apartment building, and what is the benefits of an apartment building? And me, because I'm coming from a residential single family background, when you look at the benefit of a single of an apartment building, what is the true benefit? I think a lot of people will say the true benefit is that you have your tenants all in one place. It's easier to manage, and that's true. But I think the other large return on it is not to be able to own apartment complexes, 100 doors, 200 doors, 200. Your mind starts to get to that point, and you start to build to that point, and you start to build your assets so it can get you to that point. You start to learn about things like 1031 exchanges. You start to learn that the banks are players in this field. So are other investors, right? Venture capitalists that want to come in. So, and you kind of realize in order for you to really get to where you want to be in the real estate game, you're going to have to take on partners, investors. You might have to take on debt. And me, I'm always been against debt, against taking debt. And I've tried hard to stay out of debt. I've made a lot of sacrifices to not take on excessive burdens. But one thing I do realize right now is I have to take the step this year to execute on an apartment building. On the low risk side, a 4-unit, if I can find a 4-unit that is good enough for me to take over at $500,000 or less, I'm willing to do that. I do want it to be in a good location, but I've run into these problems. So let's say you take a 4-unit or 10, or let's say 10 units or less. I've been looking at 4 units and I've been looking at 10 units or less in a nice area. This will cost you close to $1 million, $1 to $1.5 million. That's really where you're looking at in a good area of something you can say is reasonably priced. Will that cash flow? No. If you're going to take on any loan, it's not going to cash flow. So you won't be able to cash flow the property. So a lot of people advise you want to buy things in a good neighborhood. You want to buy things that are appreciating well. But if you do that, it's hard to get a property a low enough price where your down payment isn't, close to 50% or more in order to make it cash flow. And also, $500,000 in a good market like Miami, DC, New York, the big hitter cities, it's not going to get you far, right? Maybe $1 to $2 million sales price can get you somewhere. Now, I understand there's scenarios where you might get something that's not listed. You might be able to get something like doing some sort of prospecting. But I've always realized you cannot make a living that way. And we're in the business of not, in real estate, to get to a point where we ourselves are using that money to pay our expenses. And who are the people I've seen that really, really execute and are really doing those things on a daily basis? Well, I think one person is Ben Mall. I think he does a great job because you see him every day doing the work, and his principles are, although very risky, very against the grain in what I think, but what he does is working for him. He's able to, I know there's certain things I listen to his speeches and I kind of see an issue there with the things he's doing. He is maintaining his family and his whole lifestyle based on loans. That's all loan money. That's not pure money. So when you do that, you're taking on additional debt onto your properties. That's personal debt. And that personal debt, although legally it's business debt, but your personal expenses are being pushed into your business debt, and then the properties that you cash flow are supporting that. So you can get into a scenario where your cash flow is getting eaten up. But if you do it at such a large scale, you can always get out. You can always sell something. Year over year, your rents increase and your appreciation increase, and that lets you get into more and more cash flow as years go by. But back to the goal. The goal has to be right now to execute and get this apartment building. Once that apartment building is bought and purchased, wherever it is, I gotta be able to have money on the side to support it. Any problems, issues come up, I gotta be liquid. So I don't like to do this, but the plan will probably be to HELOC one or two of a couple of my properties. So I HELOC those. That'll give me some sort of backing in case I need to do some big problems or renovations happen. Because now an apartment building is huge compared to a single family. Kind of expenses you could run up: a roof issue, a leak issue, a plumbing issue. If you got to replace the plumbing or something, it could be a massive amount. 10 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand can get eaten up quick. So I'm stepping into this with a big risk factor, because I can't eat that. I can't eat that risk. But I need to break that barrier, get this first apartment building behind me. If I'm not successful, if I don't feel I've got something I can close on, I'm gonna at least buy one or two more houses. And these two houses I've kind of decided upon are gonna be tenant occupied, and they're probably gonna be in Florida or Baltimore. Florida, Baltimore. I'll try Maryland, like PG County. Worst case, Virginia. Virginia is expensive right now. It doesn't make sense for me to really take on that kind of loan, because the rents don't cover that loan. But I like Florida. There's at least 5-6 properties right now I wouldn't mind buying right now. But I'm waiting because I want to prepare myself for the next step. I want to start to really push the pace here at the end of this year. I've got a lot of research I have been doing. So there's a lot of places I like Bakersfield in California. I like Dallas, Houston. That Texas area has a lot of properties out there, but I need to visit the properties. But still, I'll do some talking with the brokers and the people out there to see what I can find about these properties. So there's a lot of things that have to be done in terms of research. One thing you got to realize when you're trying to buy a property, and you have to be able to say, hey, there's a lot of research and things I have to figure out before I put money on the table and I put an offer on the table. You have to know how old properties are. You have to know what kind of issues can come up. At this point in my life, I can look at a property and I can look at the electric, I can look at the plumbing, I can look at the roof, and I have a good idea what kind of condition it's in and what kind of work it'll take to repair. And I have some tricks up my sleeve in terms of finding out the cost of things. And I've done it a lot of times where I've stepped in a situation and I needed to kind of get a deal going, so I'll buy something, and then you go in the stage of you're fighting that mortgage, you're fighting that loan, you're fighting the cost, and you're trying to get on top. And what really happens is you get in a situation where you're forced to sell that property. Selling that property, what it does to you, it does give you some profit. If you buy right, you can kind of overcome a lot of expenses, but then you don't have that monthly cash flow. That money you get is good if you're in the business of flipping and constantly flipping. And single family houses, the thing you can't beat about them is the appreciation. Single family homes appreciate way better than apartment building, right? And I could get with $1.5 million, I could get possibly, let's say, 6 to 7 single family houses, and that's a consideration right now. I still kind of think of it as a plan B, and it's like, should I do that, or should I just get an apartment building? And one thing, let's talk about criteria. So if you want something with a high cap rate, right, you're most likely going to be in neighborhoods that aren't the best neighborhoods, that aren't the most developed, and the property you're in, it might not be the most renovated and the best location, the newest property. For some reason, the higher cap rates that you see out there are not the properties that you love to have. And the people that sell these properties, I don't know what their situation is, but one thing that they do now, because of the interest rates being high, is seller financing. So I think in the residential market, there's a lot of people with good loans, healthy loans, that want to sell. And a way to kind of purchase a single family might be advertising for seller financing. So you take on their loan, whatever they purchase it at, and then you do seller financing. They'll lock you in at that lower rate, that 2%, 3%, instead of that 8%. So in that way, you can get a low percentage rate. In the commercial realm, they're okay with that idea, and they'll advertise it right on the listing. And that lets you know that this owner is already ready for that if you need that to make your deal. So another option I have with buying an apartment building is having some seller financing, which might make me be able to get into a property I normally would not qualify for, and it might make the numbers work. Ideally, I would love to get into something where I could get qualified for a DSCR loan. The DSCR loan is one of the loans where if the property still cash flows with your loan included, you can get a DSCR loan. And the DSCR loan to simply put it, all your expenses has to be less than your cash flow. Meaning your loan, your expenses, taxes, everything for that year has to be less than your cash flow. So if your cash flow is $10, right, your expenses got to be $8, and that DSCR loan, it's a great way to get that DSCR loan. But you still got to come up with 10 to 20% of whatever loan you're taking out. Now, I've never been a big proponent in that, but the real estate game is that for me to expand and to make it worth it, it's either go big, start to really grow and expand, or start a business, start a storefront. I don't see the point in starting any of my service businesses in order to do all this marketing. I want to be, if I do start something, it's got to be in a storefront with heavy foot traffic, and me offering a product and taking a hit. Optimally, I would love to buy the real estate, but a lot of time these days, that real estate is so expensive and it's not out there. Anybody that has good storefront locations, they are leasing, and they know they're going to get a good strong lease. But as far as that's where the plan is now, I've got 5-6 months to close on something, and I've been doing I've reached out to a lot of places. So go over it again. Right now, you can get a 4 units or less, and pay 3% down. The problem with getting a 4 unit or less and putting 3% down is that your property was not going to cash flow. Your with 3% down on the property, you're going to come up with more, and you have to live in one of the units. So it's not going to cash flow. You can live in one of the units. That means your property that you're living in is going to go negative on you for however long until you can make enough down payment to make it worth it. But your entry point is 3% of the sales price, right? So you could theoretically have a place to live, pay some level of rent every month, and then, you know, at some point rent that out, and that could possibly cash flow if you make additional payments. Now, if we bring the additional payments into the scheme, then ideally you would want to just make those additional payments on the initial purchase, rent out the 4 units, and see if you can make a cash flow, right? So in that area, ideally, my initial goal is to come in with 30% of the sales price so that I can have all the units rented or rentable. That's the next option, right? So if you buy an investment property, you have to come in with, like, you need to make sure at least you have 30%. 30% is going to cover your closing costs, anybody you got to pay out, and your initial down payment. And I think it's doable. 10 units or less by the end of the year. I think I can execute on that. But really, I know that if you can execute on 10 units, it gives you an asset, right? It gives you experience in the game. It gives you legitimacy, but it doesn't give you enough to get to that 100 unit mark or that 200 unit mark. And that's kind of the issue, right? Because the amount of work you have to do to kind of network and put the tools together for a heavy door assignment, you could be spending so much money and never get paid. Like, people are not going to take you seriously because they don't know you, they don't know your history, they don't know what you're capable of, and they're not going to trust you. And there's no reason anybody should trust me to put a deal together if I've never put a 100 door or 500 door deal together. But what that entails is, if you find a deal and you want to get people involved, you might have to pay thousands to get the zoning, to get the paperwork together. If you're going to have to do any sort of, like, repair work, you might have to get the architect involved. You might have to get the contractors involved. So there's a lot of upfront work with the city you might have to take on, and there's a lot of upfront work with contractors you might have to take on to make a deal work that's that big. Also, for them to give you a loan, you're probably going to have to partner up with somebody already seasoned. So that's another part in these next couple of months, is to see if I can actually team up with someone that I really feel confident that their loyalty is going to be with me. But that's a big ask, because in this game, there's no loyalty. The guy that's with you, that's going to be running with you, once he sees that opening to take your cut, he's going to take it. And I've been screwed before in the past, and in the business world, they're all salesmen. They can smile in your face, but you'll never know when it's coming. And they'll come at the time when you are in a pressure situation. I've had people at the closing table renegotiate, and it's a tough situation. When you're not ready, you want that deal, you're hungry for that deal, not ready to walk away. But that's the thing. If you take a loan, if you're taking hard money, they're going to come at you at the closing table and renegotiate. And they're cruel and heartless individuals, you know. And they'll give you some sob story just like everybody, and let you know, try to tell you now there's nothing they can do. But they're in it for them. So that's kind of a thing I have to think about. How am I gonna, if I do involve myself with partners, how I'm gonna make sure that the ones I'm aligning myself are on the up and up. But ideally, want to break that 100 door barrier. If not, 30, 50 doors, you know. There is an opportunity out in Detroit. It's very, very tempting, you know, very tempting. The price is good, but the work, I mean, the material work that's necessary. I mean, I think if I were to hire people, or even if I were to hire people and do the work, I might maybe spend $500,000 on repairs. But if I do get that job done and I get those things up, boom, it'll be worth millions. But I don't know. I don't know if I can, see, the thing is, if to put together $500,000 on a deal right now, it might sink me, you know, if it doesn't go right. But that's where I'm at. Like I said, I'll keep you guys posted on my updates right now. Right now is the research phase, research investigation phase, and preparation phase. So real estate the hard way, you know. My successes are still building. I put a lot of time into real estate, and I'm trying to make it, trying to close out strong. And I think we can make it happen, right? So real estate the hard way, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see y'all on the next update. Over and out.